Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here. Another episode of Meaningful Live. Thank you for joining. Today we'll speak about something that's really relevant and has many implications, far-reaching implications to ourselves, today, tomorrow, the future, our children, and that is youth crime and social media. How can we stop the trend? This program is dedicated by Kimberly Vaughn in honor of all who are looking for their bashert. May they find them soon in the easiest and sweetest way possible. Amen. Absolutely. Everyone deserves to find their soulmate, their companion, their partner in life. And may this program and all those listen and benefit from it, may that bring blessings to each of us and all of us in finding that soulmate or retaining and renewing the connection with that soulmate. Okay, so youth crime and social media. Look, whenever I hear a topic that relates to children, I always have a very personal and very visceral reaction to it. Because frankly, the measure of a society and the health of a society is not defined by our standard of living, by the fact that everyone has health insurance, the fact that we have a high life expectancy, and many other factors that sociologists would describe as defining a healthy society. From my perspective, the only one measure that really defines a society that's healthy is the status, is the welfare of our children, of our relationships, because that is our future. As successful as you or I may be, what do we leave? What kind of world do we leave? And therefore, to look at our youth and to look at our children is the key to understanding where we stand. Not always comfortable to do so. Much easier to look at other factors, but it is the ultimate measure, the ultimate litmus test. When I look at my children, today they're adults. I look at my grandchildren, and I watch them. Really, I can't tell you how much whenever I have the opportunity, not just because I enjoy my grandchildren, as all of us do, and not just because I am getting nachas, which is pleasure and joy from their lives, but I also watch lives being shaped, souls being defined and shaped by all kinds of things, positive, love, affection around them, the siblings, how they fight with each other even, and how they deal with setbacks, with disappointments, sometimes very superficial ones and sometimes deeper ones, how they interact with friends. You literally see a human being in the making when you look at children. And it always brings me back to maybe the best analogy that I have discovered to identify how the psyche is shaped, that we are all like a warm ball of wax when we're young. And every experience gets etched into the wax, for good or for bad, and becomes a permanent fixture as the wax hardens. So when we get older, not just our arteries and other parts of us become more rigid, also our psyches have been shaped. That doesn't mean that all is lost or that all is found. It means that it's harder, obviously. Frederick Douglass put it so powerfully. I'm paraphrasing, I don't know if it's the exact language, but he said, infinitely easier to bring up a healthy child than to fix a broken adult. So when we talk about children, we talk about our youth, we're not just talking about another segment of the population, another target audience, another demographic. We're discussing the future. We're discussing how are we shaping the souls, the psyches, the personalities, the psychologies, the minds, the emotions, and the unconscious and subconscious and superconscious of our own future. Of course, we all have the child within us. No matter how old you are, we still have that part of us that remembers, and not just remembers, has defined us. So then when we juxtapose that and put it into the context of what's going on around us, Remember during the pandemic affected all of us, affected our children as well, affected our teenagers, our youth. The same as when you look at technology in general. Technology is a very neutral force. It doesn't have any right or wrong. It could be used in a good way, it could be used in a bad way, no different than a kitchen knife can be used to cut food, or it can be used to hurt somebody. The only thing is technology accelerates the process exponentially. Many more people, much quicker, so it amplifies everything. So if there's something really nefarious, something really wrong, it can quickly spread and create a lot of damage. Something right, it could also quickly spread. So when we talk about taking our children, our youth, and we see how social media or technology in general is impacting them, the most important thing is not just to talk about the technology, it's to talk about the souls, the human being involved here. And due to the fact that we have technology, and technology that is so widespread, talk about social media, where immediately one person can communicate with so many others, and everything spreads, and everybody's involved instantaneously, so that only amplifies the acute effects of what technology can do to us. So when you have a classroom, I remember when I was in school, I remember we had a kid in our class that was a stutterer, how he was made to suffer by some. They bullied him, made fun of. Then you amplify that on technology, you call cyberbullying, bullying. What's done on social media bullying. And it just gets so much more powerful, like a fire. In a classroom of 20 students, it's one thing, now it's 20,000. Well, it's not the exact number, but it means that, and it spreads. And it also has the element of anonymity. People can hide behind their bullying. They don't have to stand up. They can do it behind the scenes. They can change names. They can just spread a rumor. Just to use one example of social media, of youth violence. But there's, of course, much worse violence than that. I mean, you have things I don't even want to speak about, not to give anyone any ideas, but I don't want to even speak about what people are challenging children to do things that are literally dangerous. And it's all a game. And there are people going to be hurt by it. So when you have now technology, now it's amplifying it, making it so much louder and much more powerful out there. That's why it becomes a crisis. Not that it wasn't a crisis 100 years ago, 50 years ago in its own way. You hurt one person, you hurt the universe. The Talmud says that. You kill a person, you kill a universe. All the people that would have come from that person. You save a life, you save a universe. But now it's all happening so much quicker and so much more magnified due to social media. So what happens when things become amplified? On one hand, yes, the damage can be much greater, but another thing, it puts focus on it, and it forces us to do something about it. I remember the day when crimes of any type were more undercover or they were more contained. That didn't make them less important, but it was easier to ignore in a way. But once you see it become like an epidemic or a virus, in more ways than one, then it forces us to address it. Quoting Warren Buffett's great line about money, where he says, until the tide is out, you don't know who's been swimming naked. When the tide is in, when the light is shining brightly, and you don't necessarily see the cracks. But when you suddenly see it in such a blatant way, we start looking and saying, wow, this isn't just one person. So this, from my perspective, the very crisis of it is a wake-up call. We must do something about it, because it's not just one or two people. It can potentially affect thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions. So what is the standard of what we're teaching our children? And as always, in situations like this, you have to always deal with things, the short term, the band-aids, the painkillers, dealing with the symptoms, but above all is the long term, the preventive, the preemptive. What do you do to prevent social media from becoming this monster that it can turn our own youth into monsters? So short term, I leave that for other pundits and others that will talk about it. I will say just a quick few words because we need to address it. Short term, we as parents, we as adults, educators, need to be far more vigilant, far more careful, and monitoring what is going on. And when you see something wrong, not just to allow it to pass, just like if you see bullying in a classroom or you see people hurting each other or other forms of violence, one, whether it's subtle, whether it's overt, whether it's psychological, emotional, or physical, you need to address it. Here we have to become far more vigilant. Our own children, whether it's children in school, wherever we have an impact, we can no longer just choose to be bystanders, stand on the side. Now, in each case by case, you have to figure out what to do. Can you create censorship? It's not really going to work. Yes, there are laws about, obviously, what the type of, against child porn and other forms of violence against children. Certain things you can enforce, certain things you can't. But especially when it's the youth themselves that are communicating, this is part of their own social group. It's far more difficult to exercise censorship. So this requires that parents and adults that should have good relationships with their children. So there's at least a communication. And when you see a line being crossed, you have to do something about it. It's impossible to ban the use of social media or technology in general, but you can definitely harness it. Just as if you saw your child being a kleptomaniac, or you see a young person doing something, stealing from somebody or from a store, doing other things, you react. So the emphasis on responsible behavior, which was always there, needs to be now. We need to heighten that emphasis, heighten that focus. But I want to speak about it more the longer term, the whole attitude. Social media is not the criminal. Human beings can be the criminals. And it could also be not malicious. Why do we have technology? Most people have no clue why. Technology, some will say to make money with it. Some will say to have fun. Some will say to connect with others. It's another game, basically. It's another tool. So it really comes back to who am I? I remember the early days of the internet or technology. They used to say junk in, junk out. You put junk into something, so technology will just give you back a lot more junk and much quicker. You put something that's good, it will accelerate the goodness. So it forces us to go back to who am I? Why am I here? Technology is a tool chest. Tool chests are not an end in themselves. They're here to help enhance and advance what you stand for. So I believe that what we need today is nothing less than a revolution. A revolution, yes, my friends. A revolution of how we speak to children from the youngest of age. And therefore that shapes them how they will be when they become teenagers, our youth, and ultimately shape them how they become adults. And what does this revolution consist of? Understanding yourself as a human being. Why are you here? If you think you have no clue why you're here, if you don't think you have any purpose, then obviously, so technology will just be another tool. And if you're in a bad mood or you're doing something that you're looking for some thrill, technology will be another tool to create thrills. And if the thrills are at the expense of another person, it will create youth crime or any other form of crime. So it's vital more than ever, to teach our children from the youngest age, you have a purpose. You're here to illuminate, to spiritualize, in some way to improve and refine the world, the corner of the world in which you were placed. You're blessed with skills. You're blessed with gifts, with different faculties. Some may have cerebral, some emotional, some are creative, some are analytical. Just listing just a few quick ones. So it's combining your skills, your gifts, your intelligence, your emotional skills, and directing it in some way to helping your friends, helping strangers, helping the world around you. If we can instill and imbue our children with such an attitude, then technology follows. Use technology to fulfill that purpose. That is the ultimate preemptive and preventive. The best defense is offense. Once a young person is already a criminal or behaving in a criminal way, much, much harder to fix a broken adult or a broken teenager for that matter. Because you have to now go back to square one. So the most important and most vital thing we can do, especially as things only accelerate, you hear I talked about this a few months ago about ChatGPT, AI, Bard, Google's version, and more to come, is the same idea. We're not machines. We're human beings with a purpose. These heightened technologies are only going to further focus and shine a glaring light on what you stand for. And the difference will become very vivid, much more than ever before, because everything is amplified. Everything you see now in vivid terms, in vivid images. So more important than ever is the revolution of purpose, a revolution of meaning. Your life has meaning and purpose. And technology is a tool, an excellent tool, to express that. That is not right now the prevalent approach. You look at any social media site with a lot of young people, they maybe talk a little about this here and there, but it's not. It's by far overshadowed by things that are far more superficial, and ultimately many things that are also destructive. And from superficial to destructive is not a very wide gap. It's a very thin line. Especially when people start ganging up, when there's the element of collusion, so to speak. That is so much at the heart of many of these crimes. We're not even discussing predators and others that intentionally and deliberately want to use these platforms for destructive purposes. So the best preventive is create something even more powerful, a powerful surge, a revolution of purpose and meaning, especially for our young people. You are here for a purpose. Actualize it. We're here to help you do so. Then social media and technology, as I said, becomes a tool, an instrument, like any instrument. You can't knock in a nail with your hands, you knock it in with a hammer. The same thing with other instruments and tools that we use to enhance what's already there. If it's not there, the technology can become a force of tremendous destruction. Violence, crime, inhumanities, injustices, in the extreme level or not so extreme. But it's the same idea. A short-term basis, I mentioned, but I want to add some more. Based on this approach, even when you do a long-term plan, that doesn't mean the short-term can be informed by the long-term. It's just the short-term has to address immediate, stop the bleeding, get out of the line of fire. But at the same time, there are things that the big picture or the long-term solutions can help inform the short-term. I don't know if this should be legal or imposed upon, but what about if it was willing? We know that, for example, when it comes to television, the law states that the networks, the commercial networks, have to allow for free access public television, public access television. And they invest much money to provide resources and cameras and studios and so on. The same is true. Again, I'm not here suggesting necessarily legislation, but definitely a high recommendation with incentives from the government that all the social media platforms and all technology companies and all media companies of sorts should create an incentivization, especially for young people, to use these platforms towards something productive. Maybe reward them for that. Create a climate, an attitude, a standard. This is not naive and unrealistic. Look, we live in a country in the United States that gives out billions of dollars, distributes billions of dollars in charity, both on a government level, on a federal level, on a state level, a city level, and also individually. And there are incentives. The incentive of, for instance, tax deductions for nonprofits. So why not create these type of incentives as well, these all these technologies, to incentivize people to use it for something positive? So firstly, it creates a standard. It creates an idea, a more humanitarian standard. Just like humanitarianism in so many ways has become much more popular and fashionable today. Remember when there was the earthquake in Haiti? So once upon a time, an earthquake in a country, especially a poor country, was immediate reason for their neighbors to rape and pillage and completely violate that country. Today, people are competing, countries are competing to sending airplanes of food, medical supplies, support, volunteerism to help. So why can't we see with technology developing and only accelerating to create these incentives in very profound ways? We're creating incentives for energy conservation, for recycling. So why not for the very shaping of the souls and minds and hearts and souls of our children and of our youth? So it creates a standard and incentives. Is that a guarantee that is going to eliminate crime? Obviously, there are no guarantees. But the more you create a language, the more you bring it to the surface, the more we call awareness is half the cure of a problem. The more you shine the light, the higher the standard, the more it will have direct impact on individuals. And could actually prevent many of the crimes that we see. So it's really about understanding and appreciating the souls of our youth. Now, obviously, crime has to be dealt with also in a legal manner. If someone does a crime, there should be known that there are deterrents and there are punishments and consequences. I think that goes without saying, but I'm just mentioning it to be thorough. So, my friends, we're dealing with new challenges in our time, and we're dealing with the shaping of our souls and the shaping of the future. But now there are new situations. It's the same souls have always been existing from the beginning of time, but now we're dealing with the new situations, the new tools and powers. So just as nuclear energy and atomic energy and other forms of modern technology have provided so much more power can also lead to more corruption. And that's why it needs to have more, not just more regulation, but more focus on what defines us as human beings, who you are, who I am. And in addition to social media, there's so many other ways that our youth getting caught into trouble, different addictions, different destructive behaviors that later become so difficult to undo. All because there's a deep void. Nobody just gets addicted because they want to be addicted. There's a void, missing love, missing purpose, missing passion, being directed in the right way. So what we're addressing here is not just social media. It's not just youth crime with technology. It really addresses all the problems. But we can't cover everything in one program. So it's a wake-up call. And we need to, this is our moment. This is our time. This is how we will be defined. This is how the future will be defined. So I hope some of these thoughts resonate. I hope we can join forces to do whatever we can to create this revolution. And here we have technology being used to create a ripple effect, a butterfly effect. So please share this with others. And please subscribe to our growing and robust YouTube channel. Love to hear your thoughts, feedback, comments, questions, critique. This has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our hub, our main website. Love to hear from you. Check it out for many other such programs. This particular program is live every Sunday, Eastern Time, New York time, at 3 p.m. But we have many other programs during the week and many, many other materials that have been archived and collected. Please check it out at meaningfullife.com and at our YouTube channel. Be blessed and be well, and may we bring up a generation and pass the baton on to a generation that will run the marathon far better. That's the best thing we can have, is far better than we have. And may this just grow, this movement, in really creating personal and global redemption on all levels, psychological, emotional, personal, and spiritual. Thank you, sir.